Your school also will be changing, will be going according to the sequence. The first chapter that we take up would be cell, the unit of life. Okay, fundamental unit of life. So that's the first. Then we take up tissues, and then we take up what is it? Diversity. Diversity. So for the first three chapters would be this only. Science. You finish? You did finish? So let us get started. You all have your notebooks also. You have your notebooks. You have to take out. If you're ready, keep your notebooks ready. Your pencils and your pens. No, you should have separate notebook. Separate notebook लाना है. एक ही नोटबुक लेके आओगे कॉपी से लिखनी केमिस्ट्री अल्टीमेटली ना वो 6 महीने जाते जाते वो एनसाइक्लोपीडिया बन जाएगा. Separate notebooks लाना है. Then only you get the benefit because we'll be doing lots of question answers. So during the exam you can go through. So what are the important question answers? So what are we going to start with? Cell, the fundamental unit of life. The fundamental unit of life. Now, how do we define this word cell? What is the proper definition of this word cell? Do you know? Is it started in school? School is?
Starting from 6th April.
Yeah, 6th April. All from the same school?
My school started.
Your which school? Sankara, Meru, Sankara. Meru. Acha, and? April started. Which school you are from? Amrita Vidyalaya. Okay, all 4 different schools. So now, when we talk about cell, the definition, remember, how do we write down the definition of the word cell? Cell is the structural. Cell is the structural and functional unit of life. Structural and functional unit of life. We will also try to understand why do we name it as such? Why do we say as such? Why do we define this way? Cell is the structural and functional unit of life. Now, when we talk about that cell is the structural and the functional unit of life, why do we say so? Why do we define so that cell is the structural and the functional unit of life? Because you talk about any organism, talk about any particular organism, you know there's no, that the moment you talk about an organism, the organism is made up of cells. And this hierarchy, all of you must be aware now, that cells come together to form tissues, tissues come together to form organs, organs come together to form organ systems, and various organ systems come together to form the organism. No. So now, if I talk about any organism, if I now talk about any organism, this organism is made up of different types of cells. For example, say suppose I may give you some examples. Now I talk about the RBCs. This is one type of a cell. I will talk about some muscle cells, say suppose. Now I talk about some muscle cells. I name this as myofibrils. Muscle cells, myofibrils. What are muscle cells known as? Muscle cells are known as myofibrils. Then I may talk about another type of a cell this way, where you must be again acquainted with this type of a cell. So when I talk about such type of cells, what are these? We say that these are neurons, no? This type of cells are known as neurons. This type of cells are known as neurons. So now, if I look into these different types of cells, every particular cell has got a definite structure, structural unit. Every particular cell has got a definite structure. But why? Why we talk about that? Why should the RBC be small? Why should the RBC have a proper
for the functioning of the body?
Why should the RBC have a proper shape? Why should the RBC have no nucleus? Instead, the RBC should have hemoglobin. So there is a reason for this, is not so? So now that I'm saying that the RBC is a cell which does not have nucleus. Majorly, all cells have got nucleus. If I have to talk about any other normal cell of our body, we will always draw the cell like this, showing that the cell has a nucleus. But why RBC does not have a nucleus? Why the structure of RBC is something peculiar or special? Because RBC has to contain hemoglobin, and which is necessary for carrying oxygen from the lungs to the blood, and then from the blood to the other body tissues. So can we say that the cell has a specific structural unit to suit a specific function? Yes. Muscle cells. Now let us talk about another example. Muscle cells, I'm saying. When I talk about the myofibrils or the muscle cells are basically long. The muscle cells can lengthen, contract. So now, can the RBC contract? No, the RBC cannot. The RBC has a definite shape, and this shape does not allow the cells to contract. So, why should these muscle cells known as myofibrils, why should they contract? Because unless and until they contract, we cannot move our body parts. Now these muscles, now that I'm writing, these muscles which are attached to my bones are contracting and relaxing. That is what is allowing my bones to move. And that's how I'm able to write. Now that I'm talking, the muscles in my facial area is contracting and relaxing. That is what is allowing my bones to move, and that is how I'm able to talk. So can I say that the structure of these muscle cells is because of a particular function? Yes. Why the cell is long? Because it has to contract. And there are various other properties we learn, that there are certain proteins, etc., which is allowing the cell to lengthen, contract. Contract, why? Because unless and until contraction and relaxation, movement of the body will not be possible. I talk about the neurons. Why the neurons should be having such branched processes? To get messages. Why so many branched processes? These branched processes are known as dendrites. Dendrites. And what do these dendrites do? These dendrites are constantly taking information from the external environment. Now that I am talking to you, you are able to see me. Why? Now that I'm talking to you, you are able to hear. Why? Because the neurons which are at this region, the dendrites of this region can receive the information. That's why we can see each other. The light is there. We can see all these things because of the dendrites at this region. We can hear because of the dendrites at this region. The dendrites are constantly receiving information, and since they are long, the information can be passed and move to the next neuron. And then keep moving all throughout. So the information can be passed from one part of the body to the other. Information can be passed from one. I can see something. I see this duster, but I can pick it up also, no? So when I'm seeing this duster, the information goes from my eyes to my head, brain, and from my brain it comes down to my hands, etc., and then I'm able to pick it up. So this is a complex process that happens in such short time. This lengthy neurons are very fast in transferring messages. Can this function be done by the myofibrils? No. So these type of structures help in receiving messages, and this type of structures help in giving messages to the next set of neurons. These are nerve cells that I've drawn. Nerve cells. So now there are so many other examples I can talk about, that the RBCs and the platelets and the WBCs, and then we talk about the plant cells also, not only the animal cells. I've given you a few examples of animal cells. The RBCs are there, the myofibrils, and then the neuron cells are there. Then we talk about the cells of the stomach lining. The cells of the stomach lining, which we name as epithelial cells. You will learn all these in the structural tissues. The cells that we talk about in the epithelial lining, which can release various different type of chemical substances which help in the digestion of the food. So their structure is different altogether. I talk about the cells of the skin. The cells of the skin, again, a different set of cells altogether. the cells of the skin would be something like this. The cells of the skin would be something like this, where the upper layer is made up of, or the upper layer is completely coated by a separate type of a substance, and this substance does not allow unwanted substances enter into our skin every time. And there are fine hairs also which are constantly trapping those dust particles, etc. No? So now that I talk about why the cells are like this, because these cells can secrete some substances which make the surface of the skin little bit oily. So that the germs and the
getting oily matter which
makes the skin little bit soft and supple, does not give it. At the same time, the uppermost layer of the cell is also dry and dead, which is not allowing germs to enter. It does not allow the germs to enter. So this type of cells are releasing those substances. Function is different, so structures are also as such. No. So what are we learning here? That what are we learning here is that why is the cell known as a structural and a functional unit? Because every organism is made up of various different type of cells. The shapes of the cells are different to suit a particular function. Why the cells are varied in shape? To suit a particular function. Otherwise, all the millions of cells in our body would have been of the same type. No, they are not of the same type. No? Then, at the same time, even in the plants, if I talk about the cells of the root, the cells of the stem, the cells of the leaf, different in shape. Because the cells of the root, absorption of water, so they are different in shape. The cells of the stem, conduction of water, take the water upwards. Cells are different in shape. We will learn that. The cells of the leaves carry out photosynthesis. They are different in shape again. So that is not only in animals, also in different type of plants. Now, as we talk about, now let us write down this. Did you write down this statement, all of you? Write down one question. Why are cells known as the structural and functional unit? That's a very common question that we are always asking. Why are cells known as the structural and functional unit? Why are cells known as the structural and functional unit? Why are cells known as the structural and functional unit? Why are cells known as the structural and functional unit? Give answer. Cells are the unit of life. Cells are the unit of life different types of cells. Different types of cells vary in their structure. Vary in their structure to suit, S-U-I-T, to suit specific functions. To suit specific functions in an organism. In an organism. For example, to suit a specific function. For example, neurons are extremely long and branched cells. Neurons are extremely long and branched cells, so that they can receive information, and carry the information carry the information from one part. Should I write it down on the board? Are you able to follow? Okay. And carry the information from one part of the body. Carry the information from one part of the body to another. Carry the information from one part of the body to another. Okay? Comma. RBCs are biconcave. RBCs are biconcave. RBCs are biconcave and do not possess nucleus. Instead possesses hemoglobin. Instead possesses hemoglobin and are extremely small.
After biconcave.
Do not possess nucleus. Do not possess nucleus. Instead possess. Instead. Do not possess nucleus. Instead possesses hemoglobin and are very small to supply large amount of oxygen to the tissues. To supply large amount of oxygen to the tissues. Supply large amount of oxygen to the tissues. Understood? So I have given you two examples. Can you think of any other example? If at all you have read somewhere last year, anything that you have read.
Plastids, plants.
Very good. Plastids. So these are examples that you can write on your own also. Plastids. They contain colored pigments.
Chlorophyll.
Colored pigments known as chlorophyll, because of which the plastids are colored pigments and the structure is also different to suit a particular function, that is they are able to prepare food, photosynthesis. So this way, what are we learning? That why are the cells known as structural unit? Because they have got different varieties of structures. But why different varieties of structures our organism should have? Now, if I talk about our cells, we have got millions of cells, and almost hundreds of different type of shapes that we talk about. No? But why that is necessary? Because every particular type performing certain type of function. That is what we are talking about right now. Now, when we talk about the concept of size of cells, now the size of cells, if I talk about the size of cells can vary. The size of cells can vary. I may talk about the size of cells as small. I may talk about the size of cells very small, something about 0.2 or even 0.1 also there are. So I will talk about, okay, 0.1 micrometer. That's a very small unit, much lesser than a millimeter. 0.1 micrometer. To almost about certain cells we also come across which may be as big as large. So that's a single cell. That's a single cell. So that is in meters. So the ostrich egg, if I'm talking about, that is again in meters. No, roughly around, that will be roughly around 5 to 10 meters. So now, when if not 10 meters, also it will be roughly around 5 to 6 meters. So now that we are talking about that, from here we talk about almost about 5 meters, 5 to 10 meters. So why again we are talking about the size? The size is varied. The size is varied. So when we are talking about the size and the shape also is there. Shape also varied. When we talk about the shape of the cells, can we name certain shapes of cells? What are certain shapes of cells that we can talk about? We can talk about certain shapes of cells like columnar. We can talk about columnar. We can talk about cuboidal shapes. We can talk about tubular type of, roughly we are talking about certain shapes. Then we talk about some slender type of cells, and there are many more. So what are we looking into? These are shapes of cells. Shapes are of different type. Some cells are spindle shaped. So I may talk about there are certain types of cells which has got a structure something like this. We already said spherical to ho hi sakta hai, that's the most common. When we talk about spherical type of cells, this is the most common type of cells, the spherical type of cells. Then we talk about the tubular type of cells. Yes, cylindrical, tubular, cylindrical type of cells. These are, of course, there. When we talk about the slender comes under the category of the neurons again, we already discussed. We talk about the columnar and the cuboidal. Cuboidal type of cells are tall, pillar-like cells like this. And I'm sorry, these are columnar that I'm talking. And cuboidal would be this type. Cube, we already know. Cuboidal would be this type. This is columnar cells. So the shapes of cells are also varied. Size, a huge range. Shape, wide range again. Now, if I have to talk about relating to this, the shape and the size, what now next? We come across that relating to the shape and the size. Let us talk about one concept, that is complexity. Let us talk about one concept, that is complexity of cells. Let us talk about one concept, that is complexity of the cells. Now, to understand complexity of the cell, what are we going to come across? Do you believe that there are certain organisms which is just a single cell? Do you know? Amoeba. One single cell and that's the entire organism. Do we belong to that category? We have got millions of cells. Right? So there are, and in between also there are, I have been talking about the two extremes, where I talk about amoeba only one cell, and I talk about our cells, millions of cells. But in between also there will be a series, no? There will be organisms with few cells, and then few more, and then few more, and then few more. So complexity. So if I have to talk about the two big areas, then what are the two big areas we have? The two big areas are complexity of the cell we are talking about. Here, we may talk about certain organisms known as unicellular and organisms known as multicellular. So which are the two organisms that we are talking about? Two types of organisms we are talking about? Unicellular and multicellular. Unicellular, multicellular. Now that's a quite a big concept that you have to understand. Unicellular organisms, multicellular organisms. Yeah, when I talk about unicellular and multicellular organisms, let us learn something specific here along with examples. Examples, at least 5 examples you should know. So when I talk about unicellular organisms, I talk about unicellular organisms, and then we talk about multicellular. Let us try to find out some differences also here. Unicellular organisms and then multicellular organisms. So when we are talking about unicellular and multicellular organisms, what are we trying to come across first of all? What would be the first major difference? Unicellular organisms are made up of only one cell. Made up of only one cell. What about the other side? Organisms are made up of two or more cells. Organisms are made up of two or more cells. Okay? अच्छी तरह से लिखना है, not like this. कॉलम बना के अच्छी तरह से लिखो. Presentation you should practice on that also. Now, organisms are made up of only one cell. Organisms are made up of 2 or more cells. ठीक है? Now, if say suppose you talk about your own home, talk about your own family. How many members in your family? 4 members in your family. Your mother, father, and sister. Your sister is elder to you, younger to you. Okay. Now, say suppose now that today all of 4 of you are together. Huh? So your mother, father must be going out for job. Mother is at home. So lucky. Mother is staying at home, cooking nice food for you. Father is going out and working. You also must be helping your parents. Such we do. Sometimes. Be honest. So now, but just think, tomorrow if your mother, father, and your sister plans for a holiday to go out, they don't take you. नहीं तुझे पढ़ना है, तू अभी 9th standard में आ गया है, अभी तुझे पढ़ना है. So, mommy is doing the cooking part. She is laying down the table for you, breakfast and lunch and everything. So, अब जब मम्मी घर पे नहीं रहेगी, you have to do something. Huh? So now what is happening? If there is nobody for that organism, there is no help. It is only that single organism, it is that single cell which has to carry out all the functions. उसको cooking भी करना है, उसको cleaning भी करना है, lay down the table, खाने के बाद table भी साफ कर, everything, all work comes on us when we are alone at home. The same is happening to this type of organism. It is only one single cell. So this single cell will carry out the process of feeding and nutrition also, respiration also, excretion also, transportation also, सब कुछ. But then what will happen to this? After this is something like a full family together. Somebody is doing this, somebody is doing this, somebody. So is the burden on only one type, one individual? No, the work is getting distributed. When the work is getting distributed, उसको क्या बोलते हैं?
Fragmentation.
Division of labor. Division of labor. So यहाँ पे it is something like a big family. This organism has got so many cells. Some cells are carrying out the process of respiration. Some cells are carrying out the process of digestion. Some cells are carrying on the process of excretion. Some cells are carrying on the process of transportation of the nutrients, etc. So these type of organisms which are multicellular, they have got something known as division of labor. They have got something known as division of labor. मतलब काम को बांट देना. Understanding? So now let us write down another difference here. So what is the difference that we are going to write? That in this type of organism, only one cell carries out all the important physiological processes. So the single cell carries out all the physiological processes, such as digestion, respiration, excretion, etc. What will we write this side? Different cells. There is division of labor. That is, there is division of labor. That is, different group of cells perform different physiological processes. Different physiological processes. Different group of cells perform different physiological processes. Is this understood?
Yes.
So what are the two major differences between multicellular and unicellular organisms we should know? If I talk about, I'm sorry. We are talking about complexity of organisms. इसमें correction करो. Complexity of organisms we are studying, not complexity of cells. We'll come to that later. Complexity of organisms we are studying. So complexity of organisms, one organism may be made up of only one cell, and certain organisms are made up of more cells. So which is a bigger category? Unicellular is a bigger category or multicellular? Multicellular. Multicellular is a bigger category. Unicellular organisms are comparatively lesser. Now, let us write at least 3 examples. 1, 2, 3. Aata hai? Will you be able to write on your own? Chalo, think. I'll give you 2 minutes. Think. You have read in the 8th, 7th, 8th also something or the other. 3 examples लिखो. Unicellular, multicellular. अच्छा, multicellular में plants and animals नहीं लिखना है. Names लिखना है of organisms. Understood? Did you get all 6 examples? Okay. Let's wait for the others to finish. Did you get the examples? Think if you have read somewhere. अच्छा, unicellular के examples क्या लिखें? नहीं, organism. Ostrich egg is not an organism.
But then it is made of cells.
It is unicellular. It is a cell. But now we have to write examples of only those cells which are a total organism also. इसमें we cannot remember this concept. Here we cannot write examples of ostrich egg because this is going to give rise to a complete complex organism. So amoeba हम लिख सकते हैं और
Fungi, virus.
No. Fungi is multicellular. Most fungi, exception है fungi में भी, but otherwise most fungi are multicellular. और क्या लिखा? Algae, okay. Algae we can write. Virus we cannot write. Virus is not a cell at all. Virus तो कोई cell ही नहीं है. Particles. Viruses are actually particles.
I even have eukaryotic and prokaryotic.
Prokaryotic बोल सकते हैं, but these are actually not cells. Virus कोई cell है ही नहीं. It is just a protein जो हमारे cell के अंदर घुस जाता है and it starts creating all the different type of changes in our cells. So now let us write some examples. I would write amoeba. I would write euglena. These are algae. Huh? I would write paramecia.
Yeast.
Yeast unicellular. Very good. Yeast unicellular है. Apart from yeast कोई और fungi नहीं लिख सकते because they are all multicellular. Now multicellular क्या है? I can write fishes. I can write, say suppose frogs है, human है. I can talk about the mushrooms है. Any type of a plant you can.
Mushrooms are also
Fungi, but they are multicellular. Mushroom is fungi, but multicellular they are. Frogs, multicellular. Any type of a bird, any type of a fish, all multicellular. Human, multicellular, of course. So now that we talk about examples, you will be always asked, write 2 examples, write 3 examples, and differences between the unicellular and multicellular. So now that we understood multicellular and unicellular, next what are we going to come across? We have to talk about that complexity of organism. If this is so, then what about the complexity of the cell? How are the cells complex? How are cells complex? So now, if I talk about one particular cell like this, I talk about one particular cell like this, and
Many organs.
that is,
Organelles, like mitochondria. And
what are you saying? I didn't get you.
but it has the cell has many organelles like nucleus, mitochondria. And
So based on that, we can talk about how the
Yes,
cell is complex. तो अभी हमने क्या सीखा? How the organism की complexity किस पे based है? Whether the organism is having one cell or more cells. Now we try to understand that, say suppose, now we talk about this, where this is an organism that I am drawing. This is an organism that we are coming across. This is an organism that we are talking about. And there will be covering something like this, a simple organism that we are talking about. These diagrams are not important for you for drawing in the exam, but just for understanding I'm drawing here. So these are organisms, and then we are talking about some structures this way. Now, what is this organism I'm talking about? I am drawing the structure of a bacteria here. This is the structure of a bacteria. At the same time, let us draw our own cells. If I have to draw our own cells, we generally would draw it this way, where this is the covering, and then this is the hereditary material that I'm drawing here. And then there are so many cell organelles here. There are so many cell organelles here. And then there will be a whole lot of cell organelles. There will be a whole lot of cell organelles. So many different types. Okay. So just to understand. So here what I'm drawing the structure of an animal cell. I'm drawing the structure of an animal cell. Now, what are you supposed to focus on is the most important difference that you're going to find out in these 2 diagrams is, first of all, if I talk about a cell, let us talk about our cell first. First of all, when I talk about a cell, what do we understand? The moment I talk about a cell, this is a complete cell. This part is known as the cell membrane. This part is known as cell membrane. This part is known as the nuclear membrane. This is known as the nuclear membrane. And this thread-like structures are known as chromatin threads or chromatin fibers. Chromatin threads or chromatin fibers. So these chromatin fibers, are they spread out in the cytoplasm? What is cytoplasm? Just the matrix that the cell has. So now, compare these 2 diagrams now. In this diagram, what do we see? That the chromatin material is just scattered in the cytoplasm. But here what? The chromatin material is bounded. एक compartment जैसे बनाया है. And then there's a particular compartment into which the chromatin threads are present. But इसमें ऐसा है. Is there any nuclear envelope I drew here?
no.
Nothing. So there are one category of cells like this, which are very primitive. These are the primitive group of cells. Primitive, unorganized cells. So these type of cells are called what? These type of cells are called prokaryotic. Prokaryotic. Pro means primitive. Prokaryotic. Pro means primitive. And karyotic from the word carry on. Carry on means nucleus. So what are we saying? I said we are now talking about the complexity of cells. We are now talking about complexity of the cell. So what is the most important factor which decides the complexity of cell? The nucleus. How the nucleus is?
Is it well arranged? Or is it
Whether the nuclear material known as the chromatin is it scattered? No boundaries. Or if it has boundaries, then it is always considered as an advanced cell. So how do we name this? We name it as eukaryotic. Eukaryotic. Eu means advanced, developed. Okay. So here ho gaya sabse important point to remember. So what did we learn? That if it is a bacterial cell, the cell is small. So this is a common difference, a common point. This also is small, cannot be seen by naked eyes. We need a microscope. इसको भी देखने के लिए we need a microscope. As it is, we cannot see. I talk about a small pinch of the muscle and then put it under the microscope and this. No, to see the cell, we'll have to use a microscope. Otherwise, we cannot see anything. The internal details you cannot see. So here we are talking about that this particular bacteria, why are we saying that it is prokaryotic? Because the nuclear region is primitive. What does that mean? It means that the chromatin is scattered in the cytoplasm and कोई boundary नहीं है उसके आसपास. Which boundary are we talking about? Nuclear membrane. तो जो सारे cells में nuclear membrane cytoplasm और nucleus को अलग करता है. It is something like a wall. The nuclear membrane is something like a wall जो cytoplasm और nucleus को अलग करता है. This is something like the hall and this is the bedroom. So now this wall, the nuclear membrane separates two different parts. And the nuclear material, what is the name of the nuclear material? Chromatin. The chromatin fibers are never in the cytoplasm for developed cells. The nuclear material is always inside the nucleus. So ये हो गया first difference, remember. What is the other difference? See here, when I had drawn this cell, I at least drew some few cell organelles. वैसे तो और भी बहुत ज़्यादा रहता है. So now I've been drawing one cell organelle known as the mitochondria, some lysosome, some endoplasmic reticulum or Golgi. But did I draw here? Did I draw here anything? No, I have been drawing only some small vacuoles, and that's it. So these type of cells, we are already saying that they are primitive. तो अगर primitive है, तो obviously they cannot have any developed structures. So which are the developed structures we are not finding here? So we are saying that developed structures such as cell organelles are actually absent here.
So prokaryotic cells can develop, and we in a eukaryotic cells.
It takes generations. When we are talking about prokaryote, now see, if I talk about the bacteria, bacteria has been present in this planet
This is the start.
at the start, even before us. So can we say that then by the time हमारा evolution होते होते तो bacteria भी evolve होकर कितना develop हो सकता था? But it has not happened. They remain almost the same. Today also bacteria देखने के लिए we need microscope. No. So no, it ऐसा तो actually नहीं होता है because the type of cells and the proteins इतना develop नहीं होगा that they will become a complex organism altogether. Little bit changes can happen in there, but not so much of changes that they become a complete transform to become a complete advanced eukaryotic organism. नहीं बने.
So now, like while we were in 8, virus was considered as a cell, as a prokaryotic cell. It said that virus has developed, like it can be considered as both as eukaryotic and a prokaryotic because like new, like take corona, new species or like new type of corona coming, viruses are coming like that. So what is that?
No. First of all, virus is not at all prokaryotic, neither eukaryotic. Virus वो दोनों category में आता ही नहीं है because whenever we talk about what is a cell here? Why am I saying that virus is not a cell? क्योंकि एक cell होने के लिए number one, the structure should have something known as the nucleus, hereditary material, cell organelles, cytoplasm. ये सारे parts अगर होगा, then only we say that it is a cell. But if we draw the structure of a virus, how is the basic structure of a virus? There are many types. So first of all, एक protein coat रहेगा, and protein coat के आसपास एक DNA रहेगा, only that much, and there will be some protective protein structures. There will be some protective protein structures. So basically, if I talk about the structure of a virus, basically that is the structure of a virus. Do they have enough cytoplasm? No. Do they have all the variety of organelles that we have? No, nothing.
So the DNA inside is a chromatin fiber.
The DNA is a single DNA, a single small DNA, but very effective. by the time this comes in contact with our cells, it will straight away enter into this DNA and start damaging this DNA. Though they are not so powerful cells, but the DNA can really affect our DNA. That is the problem. But can we consider this at all as prokaryotic then? No, because this at least has some outer cover, some cytoplasm, at least one or two organelles it has. It has got structures for movement. No, this does not have as such. It does not have. So this is actually not a cell. It is just known as, you learned maybe in this chapter only, that these are actually known as a viruses are basically termed as a viroid particles. In concept of biology, they are basically termed as just particles made up of protein, okay, protein and glucose. Various different type of glucose and proteins actually. So what is the first difference you are going to write between prokaryotic and eukaryotic? What is the first difference that we write? Prokaryotic cells, they do not have a well-organized nucleus, and ऐसे जो इस तरह के जो nucleus or the nuclear region जहाँ पे the hereditary material is all spread out in the cytoplasm, इसको क्या बोलेंगे? This is known as nucleoid. This is what is known as nucleoid, and इसको हम बोलेंगे nucleus, proper nucleus. So what are the parts of a proper nucleus? Parts of a proper nucleus: nuclear membrane, chromatin, and the cytoplasm inside the nucleus should be there. And इसको बोलेंगे ये जो matrix है inside.
That is different. Cytoplasm plus
nucleoplasm.
Nucleoplasm
Together protoplasm बनता है. So let us now write down the differences between prokaryotic and eukaryotic. Make a column again. Prokaryotic and eukaryotic. Prokaryotic and eukaryotic. What are the differences? Let us see. Prokaryotic and eukaryotic. Okay, prokaryotic, eukaryotic, you will be having the differences in your book also. Take out the book. You have the book. Dekho, prokaryotic, eukaryotic differences must be given there. Is it there? It should be this way. Prokaryotic, eukaryotic. Tick that. Tick that. No need to write again. It's already given there. We have already given there the differences, prokaryotic and eukaryotic. Tick that topic. It's very important. Often you are asked in your paper. Often you will be asked. This is a very common question. Write differences between eukaryotic, prokaryotic. Write differences between unicellular, multicellular. Now you will read from here. Sometime later I will just take a sudden test. I will ask you to write. Not now. So now read those points. Read. The first point you read. What is the first point mentioned? Prokaryotic and eukaryotic.
On the basis of the presence of a well-defined nucleus, the cells can be differentiated into two categories: prokaryotic and eukaryotic. Pro is equal to
Don't write anything. You just follow.
Or primary. Karyotic is equal to nucleus.
So I already told you this. So this you'll have to remember. Karyotic from the word carry on. Carry on means nucleus. So the concept of prokaryotic and eukaryotic is based on complexity of cytoplasm or nucleus. Nucleus. तो nucleus कितना complex है? तो nucleus का complexity के लिए सबसे important हम क्या चीज देखते हैं? Nuclear envelope है कि नहीं? अगर nuclear envelope is present, then we say such type of cells are
eukaryotic.
Nuclear envelope present, then we say such type of cells are eukaryotic. Nuclear envelope absent, we say such type of cells are prokaryotic. Understanding? Chalo, read first point.
Eukaryotic. The organisms in which nucleus is bounded by a defined nuclear membrane are known as eukaryotic.
Read the next point.
How is prokaryotic cell different from eukaryotic cell? Prokaryotic size. They generally measure up to 1 to 10. You have
Micrometer. Micrometer. I wrote that unit earlier. Micrometer. Much lesser than a meter.
Eukaryotic cell. They generally measure up to 5 to 100
meter. That is meter.
Nuclear region. Organized nucleus is absent. Organized nucleus is present. Nuclear membrane is absent. Genetic material occurs in the form of nucleus.
Underline that word nuclei. You should know that word. Nuclei. When the chromatin is scattered in the cytoplasm and no nuclear membrane around. What is the name of such type of a nuclear organization? Nuclei. Underline that word. And complete it. Complete reading.
Nuclear membrane is present. Cell organelles. Membrane bound cell organelles like
Mitochondria. CH becomes cus. Mitochondria.
and plastids
Plastids.
are
Plastids are absent. Very good. Other side.
These cells have single chromosome. Membrane bounded cells.
This cell has single chromosome. See here, I have drawn so many. Here I drew only one single but very long. वो point को underline करके रखो. This is what you have to write. If it is a prokaryotic cell, they will never have 20, 30, 40 chromosomes. Do you know how many chromosomes we have in our cell?
20.
That is the
23, 24. Am I giving you options? 23 pairs, that means 46 we have. So can you imagine we are talking about a eukaryotic cell जिसके अंदर 46 chromosome होता है.
Well, actually 22, but one is for that after adolescence we hit it.
अरे no, you are talking about the chief after adolescence. 23 pairs होता है, 46 chromosomes होता है. Every cell may have got 46 chromosomes. There are some other organisms which has got more than 46 also. So if it is a prokaryotic, one single and very long. Only one single very long. So underline that point. You should always remember to write. Read this at home. Okay, this remains as homework. So already we had written down differences between unicellular, multicellular, and prokaryotic, eukaryotic. I asked you to go through from the book because it's already written. Sometime or the other, again, as you go on with the chapter, anytime I may ask you to write one or two questions. So keep reading. Now that we have started, keep reading. Whatever portion is over, keep reading. You have doubts, we're supposed to come and ask the next. Okay? We'll continue again the next.
Chapter.